The truth is plain to see. If you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique.
Today, there is a conscious, organized effort to destroy the sovereignty of our nation. It is part of a worldwide plan. It is being carried out in Europe with the formation of the European Union. It doesn't matter that the people of France and of the Netherlands have voted against the Constitution. They don't care what the people want, you common people. You're standing in the way of progress, this wonderful dream that they've been working for thousands of years to accomplish. What's happening today is not accidental. These people know exactly what they're doing.
These globalist forces that have an intent on bringing in line the various nation states that need to be molded together in order to create a globalist government. I believe that they will continue those efforts, and whatever it takes, force or propaganda through mainstream Western media sources, which is continually trying to do their job as well on the ground, and the subversive activities of the CIA via movements like the Alliance for Youth movements. I believe all of this will continue, and whether or not the subversive attempts will work, or whether or not the mainstream media mind manipulation will work, who's to say? But certainly NATO will continue to do, and the U.S. as the bad boy enforcers for the City of London will continue to do their job as best they can.
Understand the level of engagement that now everyone should consider being involved in. This is not a time to think that someone else is going to handle this for you. We all have to engage, again, on whatever level of understanding we have with this global assault on humanity. And this is not just an assault on humanity. This is an assault on everything that is living.
You know, what had happened for decades is people had tried to build new, false, artificial, supranational structures. And the European Union, in a sense, was the prototype for a new form of government the globalists wish to impose on all of us. Indeed, had the blessed Hillary won that election back in 2016, I reckon you now would be very much closer to that European Union and very much further away from the idea that in a democratic system, you can vote for people that make your laws, but you can equally sack people that make your laws. Like it or don't like it, men and women across this world want, by a massive majority, to live in an identifiable unit that is a nation. And they want their national flags. They want their national anthems. They want their national soccer teams to go and win the World Cup. That is what people want. It is the natural, normal human condition. It is the nation state to which we owe and pledge our allegiance. It is the nation state to whom we, albeit slightly reluctantly, pay our taxes. It is the nation state to whom, if things really go badly wrong, we're prepared to stand up and defend and fight for.
I don't necessarily think it's going to stop here. I think that it will continue. I think it's in the best interests of the elite who control the international organizations to see that we do have nation states in which there is chaos and more continued uncertainty, so that a global solution, which would naturally be provided by, these wonderful international organizations, could be adopted. And that is all part of the stride, in my opinion, towards a one world order system of governance, as well as monetary and financial control that revolves around and has for several years, several decades, past that back to the point of the Civil War in America as an example of intrusion and Anglo-Saxon, so to speak, dominance, creating the conflicts themselves for which they come through the other side and try to provide solutions. I don't know why we would suspect that this will stop. I think it will continue, or at least the effort will continue by Western powers to make this happen. The game changer potentially is the internet, where more and more people may realize that they're actually fighting on behalf of the very causes that they're trying to stamp out, the very forces of evil that they no longer wish to be subjected to. If they realize that, perhaps they won't have a revolution, or at least not one in the current color in which they're having it. Let's put it that way.
Everything the corporations and international bankers have been doing is one gigantic fraud, and all of it at our expense. Disinformation and manipulation by the international bankers' corporate structure to centralize control of all people, land, energy, resources, technologies, and economies. We must expose the hidden secret of these corporations, universities, and institutions set to control all emerging technologies that will rebuild the world's transportation, civil, manufacturing, physical infrastructure with cyber infrastructure, computers, networks, and sensors. Now, many of you are noticing the cameras everywhere. They're on all the street corners, they're up the freeways, they're on buildings, they're everywhere. There's sensors everywhere. The surveillance in the United States has already imprisoned us.
It means a totalitarian system, a system of concentration at the top, and the people being at the bottom being ruled from above. Not that the people have any voice in determining the direction of their government or the world, but they are to be told what the direction is, and they're to be told to follow it. Collectivism is a philosophy of big government and small people, and it's a philosophy that supposedly all of this is being done in the name of society. In other words, it's for the greater good of the greater number, supposedly. And so you're supposed to go along with whatever inconvenience or insult to your freedom comes along, because after all, it's in the greater good of the greater number. And this is the rationale being used, has been used for quite some time, to justify all kinds of horrible atrocities. All the leaders have to do is say, well, it's for the greater good of the greater number.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out. Beyond the severe energy restrictions inflicted by the Paris Accord, it includes yet another scheme to redistribute wealth out of the United States through the so-called Green Climate Fund, nice name, which calls for developed countries to send $100 billion to developing countries, all on top of America's existing and massive foreign aid payments.
I believe the global warming situation is a scam. And all I say is, if you really believe in global warming, why do we call Greenland, Greenland? Why? Because in the year 1000, when the Vikings were there, it was green and lush, and that was a period of global warming. And then we went into a period of global warming until about 1600. This global warming is a scam.
When you read these plans, they say that in order to reduce climate change, we must eliminate all machinery use and all equipment, and we must literally reduce the temperature that would bring us back into the year 1750, before industrialization. And millions of people will die.
We have these international elites, we call them international, but basically they're housed in each nation. We have them in England and France and the United States and Germany and so forth. And now the big move among these people is to coalesce into a true international elite, whereby they will be operating through the governmental power of the United Nations. Now they really have clout. because there's no nation in the world that can escape their power, because the way these people work is that if they want to accomplish something, if they have an agenda, let's just pick one at random, disarmament, or another one, population control, or something like that. As it is now, they have to convince each of the respective nations and their governments to implement those agendas. But once you have a true United Nations with true governmental power, with real military forces, and once you have turned over to these agencies of international power control over your armies and over your air force and over your weapons of mass destruction, you have created a global government which is cannot be challenged by any nation whatsoever. So now these international elites do not have to worry about convincing the governments in each part of the world. As long as they control the center of this power, which is the United Nations, they therefore can control the world.
It's Davos time, the World Economic Forum, set up by people years ago who wanted big politics and big business to work together. And they had this little gathering in a ski resort in Switzerland, and now thousands of people go every year. And of course it reached its absolute peak under people like Tony Blair and Clinton and Obama. And really, all the arguments for globalism have been there at Davos for the last 50 years and more. No space for the little man, no space for the nation state, really, no space certainly for the small entrepreneur. And what I thought was so delightful this year was that Donald Trump went along and just blew the whole thing up. Just told them, look, hey, you know what? You all said my America First policy would be a disaster. We're doing really well. We've got the lowest unemployment in 50 years. We've got good growth. We've actually got more black and Hispanic people now working than ever before, and poverty in those sectors being reduced. And they all sat there in complete stony silence. And I think it's really interesting to think that what's happened to us over the course of the last 50 years is we've decided nation states don't matter. We've decided national democracy doesn't really matter, because we can decide all of this in ski resorts in Switzerland. Isn't it wonderful? It's called globalism, and then we can bow down to the European Union, or perhaps give the United Nations some more power. And this is the importance, I think, of what Trump has done. It's the importance of what Brexit symbolises. Most of us, people with common sense, believe that the nation state run on democratic lines is much better than people deciding our futures in Swiss ski resorts on their annual jaunt to Davos or wherever else it may be.
It allows us to refocus our intelligence and military assets and resources to other parts of the world where they are needed, where we face new challenges. This is the world you are graduating into. This is what I want to talk about today with you for a few minutes. I believe we, and particularly you, your class, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century in a way consistent with American interest and the common interest.
Very soon, and it's happening now, that people will be required to have implantable chips in your hand, where everything that you own will be on that chip, all your hospital records will be on that chip. Your ability to access your homes keylessly will be an opportunity for people. You'll have your driver's license, your education, all your vaccinations will be on that chip.
And if you don't have your vaccinations?
They will require vaccinations. It will monitor and track with GPS capabilities everywhere you are, everywhere you go. It has the frequencies involved with the 5G are for hive mining. So for those of you that don't understand what that is, this is a collective reality now of literally putting all of our brains into the Internet of Things, where literally they're saying, I think it was by the year 2030, that the PC would have the capability of managing our cities with the brains of many people. So we're talking about AI, the 5G being the underpinning of this technology that we're all now hearing about. And everybody's going to want to be chipped because it's going to be trending.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I used to say to him, what's the point of all this? You have all the money in the world you need. You have all the power you need. What's the point? You know, what's the end goal? And he said the end goal is to get everybody chipped, to control the whole society, to have the bankers, the elite people, you know, the bankers and some governor controlling the world.
We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States, and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build.
Most people think that the UN is our last best hope for peace. That's the way it was sold to me when I was in school. It was offered as an organization where different nations could come together and work out their problems and their grievances in a peaceful manner, and be a means of reducing world conflict and increasing the economic prosperity of all of the member nations and all of these wonderful things. In reality, it turns out to be none of the above. In reality, the United Nations is the seat of what the member governments hope will become a true world government.
That's the cameras. That's all the tracking. That's the camera in your computer screen when you're sitting behind your computer. That is the flicker rate, and that's what's happening on your televisions. Everything that's coming wireless into your home. That's the wires within the walls of your home. It's all tracking. They were going to look at general sources of information. They were going to look at telephone taps, analyzing your garbage, surveillance, behavior of your children in school. They were also going to know how you lived based on the food that you ate, the shelter that you lived in, the clothes that you purchased, the transportation. They also would know your phone bills, because they would look at your itemized phone calls. They would know if you were married, because they would look at your marriage certificates and birth certificates, etc. They would know your friends, your associations, your political affiliation. They would know your personal paper trail, because they would know your banking account statements, your credit card purchases. Everything was tagged and planned to be tagged back in the 40s with the Universal Product Code. They also are using welfare, Social Security, USDA food stamps, and grants and subsidies. They say this: the principle for these ploys: the citizen will almost always make the collection of information easy if he can operate on the free sandwich principle. Eat now and pay later. We're paying dearly now. They also go on to talk about government sources via intimidation: the IRS, OSHA, the census, etc. They'll learn your patterns of living. Again, your belief systems, your contacts, how you vote, your friends, your strengths and weaknesses. They say they will maintain access to control and prices for feedback, and they will do shock testing. They will implode the economy, and they will charge us more through shock testing. They say they will destroy our opportunities, and they will allocate our opportunities. They will control the economic environment. They will control the availability of raw materials, our capital, our bank rates. They will control inflation of the currency. They will control possession of property, and they will control industrial capacity. The federal and state governments are not real. They're privately owned corporations called governments. In other words, we have a system where we have banks and corporations that have been posing as legitimate governments, and they're not. It's USA Inc. In fact, it's Earth Inc. It's a corporate system. It's a corporatocracy. And we were left out of that lesson plan. We didn't know. And it's important to understand our judicial system serves the corporations, not us. That's why when we go to court, we generally don't prevail. And that's why the years that we spend in court and the money we spend in court, that money goes to the Federal Reserve, which has, of course, nothing to do with federal and has absolutely no reserve. We must not consent to these lawless corporate statutes that were created to increase debt and enslave all of us, and that's what's happened.
Just maybe reality is usually scoffed at. Illusion is usually king. But you see, in the battle for survival of Christian civilization, it's going to be reality, not illusion or delusion, that's going to determine what the future will bring.